Of course, he is the Devils play-by-play announcer for MSG Networks. Everybody, please welcome in Don La Greca to the show. Let's bring him up here to the stage. Don, how are you this morning?
Good, Ryan. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm glad that the Devils are finally back home. I know I just asked you off, off camera a little bit, but you adjusting back to the time zone and everything. How's everything going there?
I'm trying, just a little tired. I didn't have a time to adjust. As soon as I got home, wife's like, "All right, right, let's get back to work here. We got two kids, got to get them fed and got to get them ready for school tomorrow, and then up early." And so I'm back to the East Coast routine, even though I still don't even know what the hell time it is. So it'll get there. But when you have twins that are about to turn 8 years old, you're habitually tired anyway. So
Oh my
I'm kind
gosh.
of used to all that.
I couldn't imagine. As a dog owner, I don't even have kids. I'm a dog owner, and I think that's bad. Twins, 8-year-old twins. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, they're going to be 8 December 5th. So we're a month away from them being 8 years old. So no, but it's great. It's a lot of fun, but it's just been a little hectic. That's the longest I've been away from home since having the kids. With the Rangers, I never, I occasionally was doing a whole trip, but Kenny would come back midway through and then I'd go home and then I'd go back later. But this is a full 8 days away from home. So listen, it's first world problems, but it's a bit of an adjustment.
No doubt, man. No doubt. So Don, kind of, let's go back to the beginning. Let's scene set for me when you got, like the call that you got, when you first found out this was a real thing that could happen to you. I know you're a lifelong Devils fan. And just that moment you accepted it all. Like you accepted the Devils play-by-play gig. I'm sure that was just surreal for you.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the word accepted because I kind of accepted the fact that it probably wasn't going to happen for me. I had backed up Kenny since '08, and Kenny wasn't going anywhere. And everybody kind of knew that when Sam retired, that Kenny was going to eventually relieve him. So the hope was that maybe I'd get radio, but then they brought Alex Faust in because he had television experience. And so it kind of felt like I was destined to be, the fill-in, which I was fine with because, I was doing Michael Kay and then obviously Don Hahn and Rosenberg after that. So, it was a dream to be the voice of a team. And I auditioned for the Islander job back in 16 and came close but didn't get it. And then 3 years ago, I auditioned for the Devil job and they gave it to Bill Spaulding. So, here I am getting into the second half of my 50s, and I'm like, I guess, it's not going to happen. And then I get the call from MSG on June 12th. Would you be interested? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And then it kind of just went from there. So I was just floored. I almost like the wife in Castaway getting the phone call that the husband's still alive and she passes out, and then they pan to her current husband. It was like kind of like that, like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm being offered this gig. And I had to sit on it for a couple of weeks, and then eventually it got out in the press release, and I was just blown away by it. It was pretty amazing.
I can't imagine that too, because I remember like thinking the same thing. Like you probably are looking at it like, okay, like the Devils just hired a young guy. Like there's no way that I'll ever get a shot here. So, I mean, what was the first thing you did? Like once you got that, who do you reach out to for advice on a role that is, quite honestly for you especially a dream job?
Well, it was everybody. The first person I told him was my wife, and then once it started to become official, the one good thing about being in this business is just a lot of people that I know, and one of the first people that I talked to was Kenny. There was a get together for Joe Micheletti after he announced his retirement shortly after the gig got official. And so Sam Rosen was there. So I started picking his brain and, just talking to Jack Michaels reached out to me. He's the voice of the Edmonton Oilers, and I got to know him over the last few years. And he was one of the first people that found out, and I started picking his brain because it's an adjustment. But, the play-by-play on radio is different than television. So anybody that I could talk to about just what to expect, I reached out to just about everybody, and they all had the same thing. It's just, listen, adjustment, just be yourself and just let the pictures tell the story, which is easier said than done when you're kind of ingrained, giving as much detail as possible. But everybody was really, really helpful in just getting me ready for this. But you never know until you actually get a chance to do it. But it was good to hear from those people.
I was gonna say like the differences because you've been doing radio play by play for so long. But like we all know we're all taught in journalism school. You know, it's like theater of the mind, right? Like you have to scene set a lot. So what has been the has there been a challenge in adjusting to TV at all? Like you know like in going from you know a kind of radio mindset.
All right, when I first started doing the Rangers, the critique that I got from people, Pete Silverman was one of our executive producers at ESPN, and he had worked at MSG, and he had hired some of the people that are already there at MSG back in the day. So I really respected his opinion, and he said to me, "Location, location, location. You got to constantly let the audience know where the puck is. Far wall, near wall, left wing, right wing. What pad to save was made, wrist shot, slap shot. You got to describe everything." And so I did that, and I was doing NHL Live at the time with EJ Raddick when I first started doing it on the NHL Network, and Ken Hitchcock was one of our guests. I think he was the Columbus Blue Jackets coach at the time, and he said, "Donnie, I heard you do the game the other day. Great job of the location. I knew where the puck was all the time. I really appreciate that." So like that just cemented me that I just always have to do that. That's not necessary on television. I mean, it's not going to hurt the broadcast, but it just gets a little redundant if I'm telling, I got to let you know who's got the puck, but I really don't need to tell you where it is. You can see it for yourself, so, and I've got two analysts, so I don't want to take up too much time. So, so both Kenny and Bryce can get what they need to get in. So it's been an adjustment to kind of try to dial it back just a little bit, and getting used to people talking in your ear and telling you stuff. Radio, you're kind of on your own. It's your color commentator, and you get your own reads, and you've got to kind of you record stuff ahead of time, and you got a lot of things that you kind of get used to. And now it's just different. There's a different way of going about it, Ryan. So it is just an adjustment. At the end of the day, it's still play by play, but there's a lot of other things that go into it that I still have to kind of get in the habit of doing the way I did so many years on radio.
And it might be tough to do, but I mean, you're however many games into this? What are they? 13 games in, I think, something like that. Maybe 14. How would you evaluate yourself, kind of thing? So far, like it's. I always feel like anytime I do one of these or something like that, like I always hate listening to my own voice and stuff like that. But how would you rate? How would Don La Greca rate his performance? 10 or
I
however
would,
many games in?
a work in progress. I mean, I had a couple of preseason games. And that was a challenge because half the guys on the roster, weren't going to make the team. And so you're getting to know players, and you're getting to know names and all that. And that's been the challenge too. Doing the Rangers for so long, the only thing I had to worry about was, getting to know the other team. That was half of the prep, was just getting to know the numbers and the names and the pronunciations of the other team. And so now I'm just getting to know the Devils, and making sure I've got Gritsuk's name correct, after I just met him the other day, and now I'm calling a game for him in the preseason. And so there was some bumps in the road there. And the fans have been very, very supportive. The first 8 games, I didn't do the first game against Carolina. That was on ESPN. So the first 8 games I did, they won. Yeah. And I remember Michael Kay telling me everybody loves a winner. So when they're winning, everybody's excited and all that. And then they lose 3 out of the next 4. And the games aren't as exciting, and they're not as great. They fall behind 5-0 in Colorado, and they're down 3-0 in San Jose. So the games were a little bit different. But I would probably say a work in progress. It's getting used. Listen, I've known Kenny for 20 years, but I've never worked with him in this capacity. I just met Bryce. I just met Rachel Herzog, who does a great job. I just met all the people from behind the scenes. So, getting to know them and working with them right away. So I'd say a work in progress is probably the best way that I would describe it.
What is, because I'm always so curious, like whenever you see play-by-play guys like in the locker room and stuff like that, what's your process, behind perfecting the pronunciation of a name? Because it's like some hockey players could have like a crazy name like out there or something like that. So what's your process there? Do you go up to the person? What do you do?
Well, you got to be careful because now, I don't want to name any names, but I've introduced myself to many a player that pronounces their name differently than it is actually pronounced.
Yes.
So all right, what am I supposed to do here? You just introduced yourself in one way, and now I'm supposed to call it the other way. And then you go to the PR director, and the PR director goes, no, 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 he's wrong. It's pronounced this way. It's like, how could he be wrong? That's his name. But a lot of these players, especially the European players, like to Americanize their names when they come over, but that's not necessarily how it's supposed to be pronounced. And now you find yourself calling it by the way they want it pronounced. The next thing you know, somebody's complaining because their parents are watching in Russia or Sweden or something, saying you're mispronouncing my son's name wrong. Like, and so there's always that. And we've had brothers that have had that pronounce their names differently. So it's you get together with the other announcers and you kind of come to a common ground and how it's said. And the biggest thing is, can the name be said in the rhythm of the play-by-play? Because sometimes it's really hard. These names are longer, and by the time you get the name out, two other people have touched the puck, because the game moves so fast. So it's just, it's probably half the battle sometimes of just making sure that you get everything right and talking to PR, talking to the players, talking to the other team's announcers. The NHL has a pronunciation guide, which A, isn't always correct, and B, it seems the harder the name, they don't have the pronunciation for it. So I'll go to YouTube and hear how the announcers were saying it leading up to that. So it's a challenge. There's a whole process that goes on, but eventually, once a player's been in the league for a little bit, then you start getting a little used to it. But it is kind of a pain sometimes, because you want to get it right, but it's sometimes the hardest thing to do.
Don La Greca joining us here, Devils play-by-play announcer, co-host of the Don, Hahn, and Rosenberger show, which I butchered off the top, so I gotta correct that. Don, how crazy is it, or how surreal is it? Because I know you've talked about how Dano was one of your favorite players growing up. So like sharing a booth with him, like, do you have any good stories yet with him? And I mean, just like, does it ever is it like a pinch me moment for you every game?
Because I've gotten to know him. I did some NHL lives with him. He always comes to my charity softball game every year, the Mark Sasso charity softball game that I've put together since '08. So I've known him. So there wasn't really that pinch me moment of working with Kenny, because I've known Kenny for so long. It's just a pinch me moment, the whole experience. Like, this is, now, if you had told 18-year-old Don La Greca that you'd be doing this someday, I'd be like, there's no way. There's just no way that's ever going to happen. To be able to call games for the team that you grew up, following, is that it's still amazing to me to just like to see the fans, and they seem to be happy that somebody that's been in their corner is calling the games, and to know the history, and things are a lot different than when I was growing up. I mean, they played at Brendan Byrne, a lot of those players are long gone and stuff, so it's a new experience being at the Rock and all that, but still, it's the Devils, I'm sure I still can't believe it sometimes, on the road with them, traveling with them, calling their games. It's a lot. It really is just amazing to be able to say that I'm doing this. So I'm not sure it's completely sunk in, even though it's only been, I've called, a dozen games. But it's getting there, and it's a very surreal experience. It certainly is.
Don, we talk about, everybody, constantly talks about the legacy of the Devils play-by-play position, and how well this team and MSG has been able to do over the years in hiring guys. Doc, do you have a relationship with him? And what is that like? Have you met him? Any good story there?
I've met Doc many times. I think Doc's the best to ever do it. I mean, for him to be able to match the enthusiasm to the knowledge of the game. He was a wordsmith. He was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. And I've always had an affinity for play-by-play. The story that I told many times, Ryan, you probably heard it, was in 1989, going to the Devils fan club dinner, and I wanted to sit with Jim Korn, and Jim Korn didn't show up, so they put me at the broadcast table. So I got to sit with Gary Thorne, who I loved because he was the Met broadcaster and the Devil broadcaster, and Chris Moore, who did radio, and Peter McNabb, the late Peter McNabb, who was such a salt of the earth guy, and picking their brain all the time, and then covering the Devils for Sports Phone or WFAN or wherever I was working, and talking to John Hennessy and talking to Mike Miller and picking their brain about doing play-by-play. But nobody was better than Doc. I mean, Doc was always the best at what he did. but there was a time I did a radio show, Ryan, where he called me from a phone booth. It was raining and he wasn't sure he was going to make it home on time. So he pulled over to the side of the road, found a phone booth, and did the interview so he wouldn't be late. And like, he could have canceled and I wouldn't have gotten mad at him. He could have not called and I wouldn't have gotten mad at him. But he made that kind of an effort. And he always had nice stories. And one of the things that blows me away is we were in Detroit. I was doing a Ranger game and he was there for NBC. And I remember always saying, I want Doc to hear me. I wonder if he would listen to one of my tapes, if I sent him an email of one of my games, if he'd listen to it. So I saw him and I said, Doc, would you mind giving me your email? Would you mind if I sent you some of my games? He's like, you could send it if you like, but I've heard you and I wouldn't change a thing. And I remember like floating on cloud nine the rest of that day. And another thing is one of my favorite stories is that I got to do game 1 of the Stanley Cup final in 2014,
Right.
Rangers Kings, because Doc's father-in-law passed away and he couldn't do the game on NBC. So since Kenny Albert backed up Doc, he did the game. So then I filled in for him on radio. And Neil Best from Newsday did an article, postscript of it, and he got a quote from Doc about what a great job I did. So I actually have it framed in my man cave. I was like, because he's just the greatest person in the world. So he was always just incredibly nice and accommodating, whether it was interviews, advice, and Devil fans were so lucky to have him. And that kind of intimidated me getting the job because before him it was Gary Thorne, and Gary Thorne is amazing. The Stanley Cup Finals he called the Cup Final for ABC in 2003. So he's part of that history of the Devils, and the Met games he's did and all the incredible calls. If you're a Yankee fan, he had a great call of Don Mattingly's home run in '95 of the Mariners series. Like, these are Al Albert going back to the infancy of the franchise. And even Steve Cangelosi and Bill Spaulding were outstanding at what they did. So it's intimidating to jump in line because that's the one thing the Devils always got right, and the one thing that Lou always wanted to make sure that he had the best of the best broadcasting his team. So that kind of made it intimidating that I'm now thrown into that pen, and hopefully I'll be able to live up to the expectation.
No doubt, man. I would get that. I would get that quote framed too. That's amazing. And just to hear that from someone that you see is, and he is honestly probably the greatest of all time. That's unbelievable. Don, what? Because everybody always talks about like your rants, right? Like I feel like that's the one thing that always comes up. Is there a chance we see a Devils rant this year? And what trend do you think a Devils rant would be about? What?
It's interesting. I don't think so. It's not the atmosphere for that, but you never know. I mean, the rants are kind of embarrassing in the sense that like some people think that they're scripted and I plan them out. I don't. They just happen sometimes. I'm very passionate and I'm very opinionated, and that's usually a pretty interesting combination. So if a caller gets under my skin or if something happens that I just can't take anymore, I'll kind of lose it. And then afterwards, I'm like, that was silly. But then the reaction is always so great from the listeners and the fans that, it's something that's kind of been my my signature throughout my career as a talk show host. But the atmosphere of play-by-play is different. I've got 2 former players that can give their opinions on a call that have way more weight than I do, because they played and they know the sport. My job is to paint the picture, and then those guys are supposed to analyze it. So there's really never, Ryan, a chance where I think my opinion is going to matter to the point where I think I would lose it. But if the circumstances are right, and I guess you never rule out that possibility, but I just can't imagine that. My job is to be passionate about the moment and be excited about what's going on. There was a moment, I don't remember who it was, that turned the puck over against the Ducks. Just handed it right to Kreider.
Nemec.
Yeah. And if you remember the call, it was like, oh God. I actually said, oh God. Like it came out a little bit like, that the professional thing's supposed to be, intercepted by Kreider. But my instinct was, oh, that wasn't good. That was an awful bat. So I mean, but it happens, and so I guess you never rule out. But I've got two excellent analysts that know far more hockey than I do. That I think their opinion on a call or a moment, I think, would have a lot more value than the play-by-play guy ranting about it.
No doubt, Don. And then before we stick a pitchfork in this one, we're
Okay.
gonna get to a couple fan submitted questions.
Okay. Sure.
Um, we start here with Giants Nation Show, who says, Don, I just saw Evan Neal at Macy's and I booed him.
Oh, good. Exactly. That's what you're supposed to do. That's one of my famous ones, Ryan. I know you cover the Giants,
Oh, yeah.
so you know a lot of these guys. When I heard he went after the fans, and that's something he can't tolerate. I mean, we all got in this business because we're fans, and we should never forget how fans feel. And when somebody devalues the opinion or devalues the fans in general, I just can't take that. And the Giants deserve to be booed after that game, and he went after the fans, and I felt like I needed to support the fans. The funny thing about that is that I was reading his quote and just melting down as I was reading it, and I just went off on him, and everything else came out. Boom at the DMV, boom at the Willowbrook Mall, whatever I was like threw out and said. So it's nice that fans do remember that, and he's still around, right? He's still there. So
Oh,
it hasn't cost him a job yet.
believe me, I know. Next one we have here, we'll stick with the fan theme. From Amagi Legacy here. Any memorable fan experiences yet, Don, with Devils fans since you took on the job?
Really, where we're situated at the Rock is great because we're at section 19, so a lot of the fans have to pass us, and some of them are behind us in that suite area, and it's incredible that the people that come over, the reaction that they get, they want a picture, they want an autograph. Like, so there has been one specific like blown away moment, but just how gracious they've all been and how excited they seem to be for me, and I'm excited for them. It's like, so it takes me back to be able to be in that atmosphere. I was with the Rangers for a long time, and their fans were great too, because the one thing we all could agree on, even though we might root for different teams, is that we all believe in our sport and we all love our sport and feel sometimes it's disrespected. So we all feel like we are part of that hockey community. So to be back in the Devils community, but they've been, it really just incredible. The fan club, which I was in, now wants me to speak at the fan club, which kind of blows me away. They sent me the card that I filled out when I applied to become a member, back in the late 80s. So that's been kind of surreal. The Devils, some of the guys behind the scenes presented me with the box score of the first game I ever went to, February 22nd, 1987, a 7-0 loss to the Islanders. So it's been that's been so much fun. Just the fans have been absolutely tremendous.
7-0. Dang.
7-0. A puck went off of Claude Loisel's head. It was awful. I mean, you would think most people would be turned off by the sport after going to that, but I was turned on by it. And every experience has been much better since then. But it's my wife's birthday, so it's easy to remember February 22nd. There's also, I got to find the media guide. If any of the fans are out there, I think it's a late 80s media guide. There's a picture of Patrick Sundstrom in the media guide. You see me in the stands behind him. I haven't been able to find that media guide. So just evidence to anybody who thinks that I just threw out that I'm a fan of the team, that there's evidence all over the place that I've loved this team forever.
I will do some digging myself. Next one we got, Don. Can you get more Devils talk on DHNR? I think it'd be a great way to boost the team's reputation.
Listen. When it's warranted. If the Jets keep trading for first round picks, if the Giants continue to completely melt down, and the Mets blowing huge leads, like there's always big stories. But no, there will be moments. The great thing about the show is that I do the show with Alan Hahn. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Alan. He covered the Islanders for Newsday for years. That's how I got to know Alan, because we had the Islanders on our station when we first started. So I got to know Alan there. He's a hockey guy. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't call Peter Rosenberg a hockey guy, but he is a Penguins fan, so he does like the sport. So we are way more open than other shows to talk Devils hockey. So I think we'll get players on. I think there will always be a topic of conversation. It is, Ryan, with hockey, with all the other sports going on, it's tough. But we will get more Devils hockey on our show than any other. I can guarantee you that.
I totally understand the, the balance there. Last one, Don, and before we stick a pitchfork in it, how did the line "put a pitchfork in it" come to be?
It's funny because when I got the job with the Rangers, MSG told me their advice to me was it's not about you, it's about the game. So I've always been sensitive to that, that it's not about me. This is not my chance to try to make Sports Center. Just call the game. And it was never my job, right? I was filling in for Kenny Albert. So that was his seat. I was just in it. So I played it straight. Listen, I had fun and I was myself, but Michael Kay would say, you should come up with a signature call, a goal call. I remember when I first got the job, Greg Buttle, the old Jet linebacker, I was doing Jets pre and post with him. He's like, you could come up with something. I was like, that's not me. I don't want to do that. Kay was saying to me when they got Patrick Kane, he's like, you should say Kane is able. I was like, well, first of all, it sounds stupid. Second of all, that's not something I came up with. But when I got the Devil job, they said to me that one of the reasons we hired you was for your personality, and we love how you are on the show, and we want you to be yourself. So I said, okay. And I started thinking, the one cool thing about like the Mets, like Howie Rose says, put it in the books, and Michael Kay's got see ya. And, and there's that connection that the fans, I think, have to their hometown announcer through things like that. So I started thinking about it over the summer. And if you remember back in the 90s, the Devils had this alternate logo. They never used it in games, but it was this actual like red Satan character, and he had a pitchfork in his hand. And then I noticed that the mascot sticks a pitchfork in the ice. So I'm like, maybe there's something there, put a fork in it. So I was like, put a pitchfork in it. And that's kind of connected to the Devils, and it could be something I can do when they win games. I didn't do it in the preseason. And then I'm like, I wasn't sure if I was going to do it or not. But I'm like, all right, listen, they won the game, their first game that I called. I'm going to do it. And the reaction has been amazing. Fans seem to really love it. There's this place, Athletic logo, that had T-shirts made. They sent it over to the radio station. You can probably see it on social media. So I didn't think it was going to become that big of a deal, but it was organic. I worked on it. I don't think it's that over the top, and it's a way to kind of celebrate a win. And I definitely make sure that I do it when the clock zeroes out. I don't need to do it. Like somebody said, why didn't you do it after the empty net goal when they were up 5-2? I'm like, yeah, because if they give up 3 goals in 30 seconds, everybody's going to say, I jinxed it, and then it's going to go away. So when the clock zeroes out, something to say. And MSG likes it. The Devils love it. And the fans seem to really like it too. So that's how it all got started.
I love it, man. Okay, one more. I know I said that was the last one, but I have one
I'm
more.
having fun, man. This is fun.
Entertain me. Okay, what's with the honey?
Oh, the Manuka honey?
Yeah.
All right. Ryan Ruocco, who does Nets, backs up Michael Kay on Yankees. He's got this whole regimen about his voice. Now, I'm not that crazy to protect my voice, but sometimes I'm on the air for like 7 hours between the show and then doing the game and all that. And then whenever I've gotten sick, I worry about losing my voice and not being able to do games. So Ryan Ruocco hooked me up with this doctor by the name of Dr. Max April. He's actually an Islander guy. And he turned me on to this thing called Manuka honey. Manuka honey's from New Zealand. It's very expensive. It costs like $35 a jar, but it's like a miracle drug, man. Like you take it and it just automatically you start to heal your voice. So whenever you're sick or if I feel like I'm losing my voice, I carry it with me, and it really works. So for people that have to use their voice a lot, or when you get sick and the voice sounds gravelly and it really works. So I never travel without it. One time they confiscated it in an airport. I openly wept because not only did I lose it, but I was like $35 down the drain. And it's not easy to find. You got to get it like at a Whole Foods or something. But it is, I'm glad Rachel did the feature on it. And it just figured Rachel did the feature on it, and before she can finish it, Kreider had a breakaway. So I had to jump in and mention that save it. I say, hey, listen, I was able to do it because of my Manuka honey. I had a little bit of a cold on the West Coast trip, and it was, helped to have the Manuka honey. So it's the secret weapon of announcers around the United States.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Well, Don, thank you so much for joining us here today. Appreciate your insight. Appreciate the conversation, and we will. I guess I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, looking forward to it, man. So good to get back home, get some home games, and let's see if they can get back to their winning ways. Thanks, man. This was a lot of fun.
You got it, Don. Anytime. Come on. Anytime.
You got it.
Appreciate it, man. All right, guys. That was Don La Greca joining us. A lot of fun conversations there. A lot of insights into Honey. A lot of insights into the booth. The Devils are practicing right now, so I better get over to the rink. Apparently, Cody Glass is back on the ice. Apparently, Connor Brown is back on the ice. So let's go see what's going on there. Thank you all for tuning in to Speaking of the Devils. I will talk to you guys after tomorrow's game. They take on the Montreal Canadiens, who are it's a pretty decent test for the New Jersey Devils early on this season, and then you got the Penguins game on Saturday. So I will talk to you guys then. Have a great day. Bye bye.